And we're back with Pro Wrestling Talk Radio, the show where fans rate and debate the hottest topics in the world of wrestling. Jay here with my co-hosts David and Manny, and we're here with a very special guest. The Monday Night Wars between WWE and WCW represents an integral time period in the history of professional wrestling. So it is my pleasure to welcome one of the biggest stars of that era to PWTR. The three-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, Master of the Diamond Cutter, Diamond Dallas Page. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey guys, good to be here.
From what I've known about you through the years and what I learned specifically doing research for this interview, you have a pretty fascinating story to tell. So is it cool if we delve deeper into that today?
Sure.
Great. While you've become world famous as DDP the in-ring competitor, you actually broke into the wrestling industry as a manager, but I understand that wasn't exactly on purpose because your intention was to become a pro wrestler initially, but at the time, why didn't that happen?
I tried when I was 22, but it didn't work out for me. I hurt my knee. I had like 3 matches back in 1978, and it just didn't work out for me. And because my knee was hurt, and I got my opportunity to run a rock and roll bar. A small little rock and roll bar, but it was so much fun. I sort of, just focused in on the booze, the broads, and the party. And then, before I knew it, years had passed by, and the 80s wrestling blew up, and I didn't pay my dues to be around there, and it pissed me off so much I dropped the ball and lost sight of the big goal, and I completely stopped watching wrestling. And then one night I was flicking the channels and I saw Jesse Ventura, and I heard him talking about Jake Snake Roberts. The next thing you know, I was pulled back in.
Now, with your knee injury, it's understandable that some people would interpret that as a sign, like, you know what, this industry clearly isn't for me, especially seeing as you were so early on in the process. But what was that source of your attraction to the wrestling business that made you continue to pursue being a part of it?
Well, once I got pulled back into it, I didn't really think about focusing on being a part of it. It was just something that, I decided to open up and start to pay attention to again. And it was a lot of fun to watch. And like so many people who watch something, whether it's they're watching a band on MTV or listening to music and say, I know people who said the first time I saw Elvis or saw the Beatles or, saw something, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Well, anybody can do it. Anybody can play in a band. Really, just about anybody can learn how to wrestle. Now, will you become any good at it? Will you make the people actually give a shit? That's the hard part. And, I just had it in the back of my head that, I really wish I would have done that. And then one night in a big nightclub I was running in Fort Myers, Florida, I just got to talking to my buddies after we got done ringing out the registers, and we sat around drinking. And that night, Diamond Dallas Page, the Diamond Dolls, and the Diamond Exchange was pretty much born as the idea. And all it was a drinking idea. And, a dream that what if I could do this if I could ever get the opportunity. And it just so happens that the next week they were doing a story on me and my club. It was called Norma Jean's Dance Club. And they were interviewing me because I was the guy behind the voice of the commercials. And I had synthesizers and made it really entertaining to listen to. But I also might throw the Macho Man on there and, have him cut part of the promo, or Hogan. I could do Jesse Ventura to a T back then. And they did an interview with me. At one point, they said, "So where does the voice come from?" And I'd written down on a blotter on my desk that night, and a couple nights before, Diamond Dallas Page, the Diamond Exchange, the Diamond Dolls. And there was a pair of sunglasses sitting right next to it. So instinctively, I just grabbed the sunglasses, I put them on, I said, "The voice comes from Diamond Dallas Page Day. I was born to be a professional wrestling manager." And I took them off and I kept talking. And somebody saw it. And he had a radio show. And he asked me to come on it. And I was like, "Dude, I don't really do this. I sort of made it up." And he was like, "Who cares? It's radio. You're awesome." So I went and did his show a couple of times, got to talk to Captain Lou Albano, Sergeant Slaughter, sort of like what you guys are doing right now. But back then, everybody didn't have their own podcast. Back then, there was a couple of stations that you could get on that actually did anything like this. And that's all there was a couple. And after finishing the second interview I did, being there for the hour or whatever time we were there for, this guy Smitty said, you should really think about doing this professionally. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't, doing what? He goes, you should make some kind of demo tape. And he had a friend named Rob Russin who used to be, this guy was all about boxing, and he was just pulling wrestling in. He said, this guy Rob Russin just started working for the AWA. I've got his address. You should send him something. So I went home that night, and I thought about it. And next thing I know, I started creating storylines for characters like Big Bad John, and Rock Hard Rick, the Iceman, and Ted E. Bear, a midget with diamond dolls. And I wrote these storylines, and I developed these interviews, and I sent them to the AWA. And they called me, and they were like, we really like your stuff. We just got one question. I showed it around, and everybody's, finds you, you've got pretty good work ethic, and, you're pretty talented, but no one's ever heard of you. Where are you guys working? We want to bring you and your wrestlers in for an interview. I want to put you on TV and try you out. And I was like, well, there's one problem. They were like, what's that? None of those guys can wrestle. They were like, what? What'd you send it to us for? And I said, because they want to wrestle, but it's like a secret society. No one knows how to figure it out, how to get in. You can manage. I could manage right now. And they were like, well, don't call us. We'll call you. And I thought, well, you know what? I got pretty close. Just by just taking something that was an idea, just don't think it, ink it, writing it down, creating a story. And 2 weeks later, they called me back. Because as luck would have it, I was destined to do this. Paul E. Dangerously, who is Paul Heyman, he was a young, mouth, just like Jimmy Cornette out there. He had left the AWA to go to the NWA, and it left a huge void for a young guy who had energy and a rap. So Greg Gagne called me up and asked me to come in and try out. I had to fly myself in. He told me to bring some of those hot chicks. We're in the video with you, which looking back, they weren't all that hot. They looked okay, but they were nothing like what the Diamond Dolls would become. But they were like, you come in, bring all those crazy clothes you wear. Because back then I was Mr. Rock and Roll, man. I wore zebra skin jackets, leopard jackets, zebra skin boots, torn up, ripped up jeans. This is like 1988. A handful of people did that shit. Now you buy them like that. But it was a lot of fun, and I got to do. I worked 1 day a week, and I got to manage the World Champions Bad Company along with Medusa and Colonel De Beers and a couple other people. So it was. I was living the dream on ESPN, making no money. But that's how it works out in the beginning. People think, oh, God, you're on TV, you must be making a ton of money. No, not really. I didn't make good money until about 3/4 of the way in, and I didn't make great money till the end.
Mr. Page, this is Manny talking now. As we fast forward to your in-ring competitive days, you became one of the most popular superstars that WCW had to offer. What would you say that it was about your in-ring performance and your character that made you such a beloved and endearing person with the fans?
I think the passion would be number one. People know when you're phoning it in. And people know when you're just, giving it a half-hearted attempt. But they also know when when you're busting your ass out there. And I often say, because before I changed my name to Dallas Page, my real name was Page Joseph Falkenberg. And I realized as time went on, when Paige Joseph Falkenberg stopped trying to be the bigger-than-life wrestling persona, Diamond Dallas Page, and Diamond Dallas Page started to take on the real-life characteristics of Paige Joseph Falkenberg, bang, man, my career took off like a rocket. And people could relate to the hardest-working guy in professional wrestling because they didn't see me show up like Goldberg did, beating everyone in his path. They saw me get my ass whooped. And then get a little bit of shine, then got my ass whooped. And you tell me how many guys you've seen on TV from the beginning get their ass whooped and then turn around to be a huge star. Oh, that answer is nobody.
Your career is definitely unique in that, right?
Right. Nobody. Because you can look at every single star that the WWE has. They may not have kicked ass the whole time, but when they started, they start out with a win. They start out with a push. They start out with, let's see if we can get the machine behind this person. That's not how it was for me. Nobody believed in me. It was a lot like Daniel Bryan. And that's the closest guy I've seen. And there's a guy who has risen to the heights that I never even got to. You know, he has just got, everything has worked out for him perfectly. When it looked like everybody was going to fuck him, you know, it all worked out really well for him. And I couldn't be any happier because that's one of the real nicest guys on the planet, never mind the business.
Now, once you finally got that shine, you had the opportunity to capture your first world title against some of the legends that WCW had to offer at that time, in Hogan, Sting, and Flair. Oh, what was that moment like for you?
Well, when all of a sudden you go, you know, and it's years. It doesn't happen all overnight. But, you know, when all of a sudden you go from, you know, watching these guys on TV to being in the same, you know, building with them, to in the same angles with them, that's a whole nother level of, I don't know, I guess just the proof that the work ethic, and if you never give up and you keep pushing forward, you know, whether it's your weight goals because you want to lose, you know, 100 pounds, or, you know, or your goal to get into college, and you know, you don't make it on your first couple SATs, but you keep working your ass off, and then you finally get accepted to Georgia, you know, or you get professional wrestling, and you finally get there, you appreciate it. If it comes easy to you, you appreciate nothing. But when you got to really work for it, you appreciate that. And the fans are the same way. You know, looking back to a guy like Daniel Bryan, you know, I was there in Miami when, you know, the Great White ate him alive with that big bro kick and took the world title from him in, you know, 8 seconds or whatever that was. And the fans, it got him more over that night than if he would have beat him. You know, it made a monster impact. You know, there's better than, there's less than, and there's different than. And Daniel Bryan is absolutely different than. So is Diamond Dallas Page. You know, you never would believe that, you know, that if you look at Diamond Dallas Page, even in the end of 1995, when Pro Wrestling Illustrated gave me Most Improved Wrestler of the Year, there is no way you would ever believe that 2 years later that I would have been headlining one main event after the other.
On the subject of you as a main event star, more specifically World Championships, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your final one. Your last world title reign ended when David Arquette won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Now, this is widely regarded as one of, if not the most infamous moment in WCW history among fans, but as a person directly involved in the matter, what's your view on it?
You know, I try to say there, I always said everybody, I thought it was bullshit. You know, it was stupid. You know, they didn't realize how stupid it was. They didn't realize that you'd still be talking about it. You know, they wanted it to make an impact, and it made an impact, not a positive one. You know, but But David did not want to do it. He thought I was kidding. And then when I told him, I'm not kidding, dude, because I argued for 30 minutes, and it was like talking to a wall. And it wasn't Bischoff's idea, but he had just come in to be co-booker with Russo, and it was Russo's idea. And I don't think Bischoff, he saw us have a lot of success with the, celebrity thing. We had a lot of success with that. Made a lot of money with that. So even though that wasn't really his idea, he sort of went with it because him and Russo had just got together. If he could go back in time, I'm sure he would never have done it. But again, David didn't want to do it. And it's one of the sweet ways. I never lost that world title. You look at it like that. Never really thought about that till you just said that, but I never lost a world title. Bischoff got pinned by Arquette. So I never really lost that world title. David Arquette, a lot of people don't know, but I make sure, when it gets brought up, I tell people, he only made like $10,000 for that pay-per-view. He gave it to Melanie Pillman.
Oh, wow.
Pillman had died. Yeah, people don't know that, he wasn't about the money to David. It was about, being involved in WCW. He loved wrestling. And all he's been is chastised for that, something he didn't do. And the really funny part is all three of you would have jumped through a fucking ring of burning fire to get the opportunity that he had. And just about every person I've ever, not just about, every single fan I've ever talked to would jump through a ring of fire to have the same opportunity he had. And would have taken it. Am I correct? If you guys were offered the world title?
You are 100% correct.
Dude, I'd jump out of a plane without a parachute.
And that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But it's the most, how disgraceful. You fuckers would have done it too. So when it was all said and done, that's how I explained to him. I'm like, dude, you're not writing the story here. So you can either embrace this, like I know you really love, you just can't believe it's happening. And so he actually got to play world champion. But then again, so did Russo and so did Vince. Vince literally being the most believable because he really is the world champion, whatever that he achieved.
Hey, Dallas, this is David. Growing up, I was a really big fan of WCW. I actually watched that over the WWF, and I had so many amazing memories, especially of you. You using the diamond cutter. I'd never seen a wrestler use a finisher and such. There was just so many things that you could do with it. You wrestling Goldberg, the likes of the NWO, Sting, and whatnot. What were some of your personal career highlights working in WCW or even WWE, your whole career?
I look at, most of my career as being not even TNA or WWE. I did way more in TNA I did in WWE. But, WCW was just an amazing run. And one of my favorite moments was in 1997, January. I had a call from Jake Roberts, who was my mentor. And I watched more Jake Roberts than any person alive. And if you look at our mannerisms, I've had people call me Jake. No, dude, I'm Jake. I'm DDP. Oh, yeah, DDP. I'm sorry. But, because our mannerisms were, and where I wasn't ripping him off in any way, but certain things he did, I just made my own. And he called me in 97, and all he said was one word: congratulations. I said, Jake? He's like, yeah. I go, congratulations for what? He said, reinventing the DDT. The DDT was the move of the 80s. In the 90s, there was no move more imitated than the diamond cutter. And I just watched Monday night, and they're giving that a good push to that kid Adam Rose. And he grabs the diamond cutter exactly the way I did in the cravat, and he does that leg swing through, which is essentially a diamond cutter. But I love the way he did it. It was different. But I think it shows you that I've probably seen since I've stopped wrestling, another 20, 30 ways than that damn diamond cutter. That's what makes it the greatest move ever.
The Monday Night Wars came to an end with WCW being bought out by Vince McMahon and WWE. That word, war, it pretty much characterizes the relationship between the two companies. So with that being said, what was that atmosphere like going from being competitors to now actually having to share space with the WWE roster in their locker room?
No, we were the enemy. I never viewed us that way, but that's how we were viewed. And that's how one of the reasons why Vince got his troops to get around to, because there was a point in time where it really looked like we were going to shut them down. So there was a time where Vince was taking the water coolers out. Like it was not a good time. It looks like, and I didn't want that either. But when we came back, and then the war got more interesting again when they started to go back and forth. When it was all said and done, it was a time where you walked in there and you could feel the heat. It was like when one corporation buys another corporation. I didn't really feel it till a couple of weeks after I was there. Then I realized, okay, wow, that's how Vince rallied the troops too. He got people to work crazy hours and do whatever they needed to do because of, he's trying to take away your livelihood, trying to take your food away from your family. Eric Bischoff wants to shut your job down, wants to take your food, your dinner off your table. And so there was a lot of heat there. I didn't really notice until I got there. And then it was pretty obvious that it was just, to prove a point, because you don't do an invasion angle without the top guys. You don't pick one guy. You bring all of them. If you're really going to do an invasion angle, you do it like Eric Bischoff did it when we had two guys show up and they killed everyone. That's how you make an impact. And that's obviously not what happened. So that was what it was.
Definitely. A lot of fans were very disappointed in the way the invasion angle went down. One question I'd like to get to you is, what were some of the differences between the way WCW was run and the way WWE or WWF at the time was run?
Really not that much. Everything was shot the same way it is today. I mean, they're changing the TVs the same day they're doing them. It's like riding on the end of a lightning bolt. That's what it's like. What's different about back then and today is today they're scripted. My generation, we made up our own shit. And we stayed within what we are told was the outline. And I think that's way easier to do than to have someone give you the words and then you've got to live them. I mean, I got a lot of respect for these young kids who can go out there and cut some of these promos that are long as shit. They may have changed the dialogue 10 minutes before they went out there. So, sometimes they get a couple hours, but a lot of times they're changing as you're going out there at times. So, these kids are, they're pretty talented.
So you're saying that back then they just gave you a general outline of what you were supposed to do, whereas today everything is strictly scripted? Like they tell you exactly what to do when you go out there?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Okay. I know Austin don't like that. I know I wouldn't really like that. But only because you're not used to doing it. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. Back in the day when you could bring your own personality, they still have, you'll see the guys still bringing their own personality, but that whole Adam Rhodes bit that he's doing and Bo Leave, I mean, all that stuff's written for him.
So you guys are just coming up with stuff on the fly, like doing, and then you guys have like a specific amount of time, like maybe 10 minutes. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there was times like, that's why when I did those first videos I made, I mean, I had cue cards and shit because I was wearing sunglasses, so you couldn't see me reading them. But I figured these guys got to have cue cards. How could they remember all that? Oh, they do. We do. Because, you got to. And as you know, there's plenty of guys that don't really talk that well. But they really don't ever really get over either. The reason why John Cena's been the man all this time, that cat can talk. And he can go with the best of them. Like there was a point where he was facing Rock in that one deal. I don't think it was the second year, I think it was. And Rock was like writing stuff down on his arms, like he's famous for that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And John exposed him, you know, because John just been doing it. It's also being in a spot where you're doing it all the time. Like The Rock is awesome, you know, without question, one of the greatest talkers ever in our business. But you know, everybody has their own way of doing stuff. But The Rock took everything from everybody, from the People's Champ to the Great One, to Bring It. You know, Bring It. Where does Bring It come from? You tell me. Where does Bring It come from?
I don't know. The 90s.
You don't know, do you?
I'm going to assume an 80s action movie starring either Stallone or Schwarzenegger.
Nope, but you're close. It was a 90s Matrix movie.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, when Neo did the yeah.
When he does the hand, Bring It. You know, so I mean, The Rock, you know, even the People's Champion, because I never really used the People's Champion the way he used it. You know, and I wasn't doing it right when he started, because I'd become a heel. And he took it with the heel part and did it. So what a great angle that would have been, People's Champion versus People's Champion. It would have been amazing. And I came up with that 2 years before I went there. And that's the part where it really looked like the WWE was really like, all right, they screwed DDP. You know, they gave an angle that really didn't work, blah, 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 blah. But how I look at that, I had this whole idea, the People's Champion versus People's Champion, and I didn't pitch my idea the way I pitch an idea. And I didn't have the conviction or the passion with Vince I should have had, because I was thinking, well, they know what's going to be the best. What lesson I learned that day was, you can't be afraid to get up from the table and walk away. And there's so many negotiations where people stay in the negotiation even though they know it's not right for them, but they feel they need to for whatever reason. Well, I learned that day, you never not get up and walk away from the table. And I've been doing it as a businessman ever since that day. And DDP Yoga is just past 109,000 orders. That's almost $11 million in less than 2.5 years. This company that I have, and the only reason it's doing so well is because it works. You know, I've got some of the greatest testimonies in fitness history, and I don't have one. I've got shitloads. And again, because it works. But if you knew how many times I've got up and walked away from the table from, you know, deals I made with Shark Tank, after we went through all of our auditions, all of our interviews, when it was all said and done, time to sign that 27-page contract, and I had my business partner contact him and say, "We love the show. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but we're going to pass." Because they wanted to control me. They called me 90 minutes later. "How can we fix this?" I said, "Here's what I'm not going to do." And long story short, 3 contracts later, I walked away from 3 in a row. The 4th one I signed, and I did the show. It was the best thing ever happened to me. But I did it on my terms. And I was just going to buy a building or rent from a building, and these guys were jerking me around. I was going to give them $150,000 up front, and over the next 5 years, they would have gotten $400,000 in rent from me, and I was going to put $500,000 into the business. And they started jerking me around at the end. Said, fuck them. Went down the street, bought a building. Best thing ever happened to me. Now I put all the money in my own building. Again, walk away from the table. And I never really learned that lesson without Vince McMahon. And then Vince did me the greatest favor ever. And as far as I'm concerned, he gave me the biggest push he could ever give me at Old School Raw when he let me cut that 1.5-minute promo on DDP Yoga. It's sure, it was tongue-in-cheek, but that's how it has to be on that show. But it was funny, it was entertaining, and it drove so many people to our site, ddpyoga.com, it shut it down. So it taught me, again, you're going to go on Shark Tank, you're going to have more than one server, no matter how good your server is. When we did Shark Tank, we had 32 servers. So that night, not only did he give me my own little infomercial, but how many people, what do you see besides Brock Lesnar? Who wears their own shit on that show that WWE doesn't control?
I don't really think it's anybody I could name.
No one. And Vince allowed me to do that. And then he brought Jake Robertson, and I was one of the 5 people who knew Jake was going to be there. And that's directly related to me and DDP Yoga. And then for him to induct both, because, Scott, I should say, Vince has the last say on everything. Triple H is really the one who made it happen, as far as I'm concerned. But, it took Mr. McMahon to say yes. To put Scott Hall and Jake Roberts in the Hall of Fame in the same year, and I get to induct them in. Greatest gift ever, man. My company is just killing it. And it's changing people's lives on a whole different level. So, I'm living a dream this time on a whole, it's just taken to the next level.
Well, I can say personally that the military and wrestling are 2 very big parts of my life in their own unique ways. And I think it's nothing short of amazing what DDP Yoga has enabled you to do in both of those venues, from visiting military bases around the world to the amazing transformation of the veteran Arthur Boorman, who actually joined you on that episode of Shark Tank with his inspirational stories. And you want to talk about inspirational stories, look no further than the accountability crib with Jake the Snake Roberts and Scott Hall. Man, if you haven't heard it enough before, I'm pretty sure you have, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it again anyway. Thank you for not only your career as an in-ring competitor in the wrestling industry, but also what you've done in basically giving Jake the Snake and Scott Hall a new lease on life. The fans can continue to enjoy them as they do interviews, conventions, appearances at events, and most importantly, from their perspective, they both credit you with saving their lives. So on behalf of wrestling fans around the world, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, it was an awesome gift to give back to both of those guys. Because they're both good friends of mine, and they put the work in. So that's really all you can ask for. They put the work in. But guys, give you one more question, because I got to, Jake actually had a bet with this guy from CBS Sports, and he was doing the online CBSSports.com. He was doing a football picks every week. And if Jake lost, he had to come and clean the garbage and be a janitor at the CBS.com studios. And if Dave lost, well, he had to come to the accountability crib and do DDP Yoga. So he's going to get here in about 10, 15 more minutes, and I got to get ready to go down there and kick his ass.
Well, we definitely don't want to hold you up from that, spreading that message of DDP Yoga. So I would like to thank you for being here, answering all of our questions here on Pro Wrestling Talk Radio. And could we just get a quick, this is DDP and you're listening to PWTR?
Yo, monkeys, it's me, DDP, the king of bada bing, the master of the diamond cutter, the three-time world champion, and founder and CEO of DDP Yoga. And you, monkey, or you're listening to PWTR. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Bang.
Wow, that was kind of amazing. And thank you, DDP, once again, and have a wonderful day.
You guys too. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.
Great
you
talking
so
to you.
much.
Thank you.